Hello, welcome to JupiterAudiobooks.com. I hope you enjoy this audio. Remember that you can find this and many other complete novels visiting our official website, JupiterAudiobooks.com. Get comfortable and enjoy the narration.
Prologue. An age-old determination, still fresh in her heart. Life is a series of choices, and time is irreversible. If there was ever a single moment that had defined Ruri Fuyajo's life, it could only have been that day. That day 7 years ago. The young Ruri had been seated before the head of the Fuyajo clan in the family mansion. She was surrounded by a group of masked girls, and her mother was behind her. It was such a strange space. Yet Ruri neither felt uneasy nor found it to be in any way out of the ordinary. She merely focused on looking straight ahead toward the far end of the room. Why? Because the flame of determination had been kindled inside her. Do you mean it? A quiet voice echoed from behind a bamboo blind that shielded the elevated platform at the end of the room. Yes, Ruri answered calmly as she held her gaze firm. I will become a mage strong enough to beat anyone. A mage with the power to defeat any annihilation factor. At this declaration, the girls seated around her began to giggle. Well, that response wasn't entirely unreasonable. After all, this was coming from someone who couldn't even manifest her first substantiation. The girl's reaction was entirely natural. Quiet. But the voice sounding from behind the bamboo blind quickly silenced them. Ruri. A mage's power lies in the strength of their heart. Are you truly prepared? Yes, she answered without the slightest hesitation. So long as enemies seek to ravage the world, I will defeat them. I'll be as strong as I need to be. So please. She paused, clenching her fists tightly. Please let my brother live a normal life. Chapter 1. Receiving a letter from the family head. A night storms the world was dyed in 5 colors. Mushiki Kuga gazed at the fantastic scene spread out before him from his vantage point on the edge of a towering skyscraper in the void. It was such a strange view. The space, so vast that you couldn't tell where it ended, was divided into 5 sections like a cake into slices, each characterized by wholly unique scenery. It was as if he had cut up several postcards and glued them back together as his mood fancied. It was hard to believe that it was all real. In fact, if the old Mushiki had seen this, he would have thought it was a dream or an illusion. But perhaps that was only to be expected. After all, gathered here now were the mages lauded as the best in the whole world. Allow me to provide an overview of the incident once again, a clear voice echoed throughout that 5-colored world. Curiously, the voice seemed to fill every corner of that vast, endless space. Clara Tokishima, a mage belonging to Shadow Tower, led a cohort of her followers to stage an uprising during the exhibition match held the other day at Void's Garden. Her objective was to obtain the heart of the Ouroboros, a mythic great annihilation factor sealed in the basement of the Garden's library, along with information on the facilities where the other pieces of the Ouroboros were kept. We are presently still attempting to locate her, but her current whereabouts remain unknown. This explanation was given by a girl with dark hair and dark eyes, her gaze cool, and her expression betraying not a hint of emotion. The girl was dressed from head to toe in the monotonous uniform of a personal attendant. Her name was Kuro Karasuma and she served the head of Void's Garden. Right now, she stood ramrod straight behind Mushiki's back, above the sideways looming skyscraper. I see, uttered the low voice of a man. The next moment, the world to Mushiki's right pulsated slightly, spreading out and zooming in. Emerging in its place was a frightening scene bathed in red moonlight. A row of dead trees. Barren earth. A single Western-style building, with an endless bundle of spires, emanating a bewitching glow. And a tall man sitting back in a chair. Though appearance was no guarantee of a mage's true age, he looked to be around 40 years old. His eyes were shielded by rainbow-colored glasses, and he wore a long cloak. Despite the immense distance between them, Mushiki had no difficulty making out his voice and appearance. Aishiro Yurendo, the headmaster of the Mage Training Institute Ember's Peak. The Ouroboros. To think that sealed mythologia could have been resurrected infused with a human no less. Do you have a photograph of this Clara Tokishima? Yes, Kuro responded, moving the fingers of her right hand as though swiping on a giant tablet screen. Then, in the center of that huge space, an image filled the air. A young woman in a flashy outfit, with pink hair and multiple earrings and ear cuffs, posing and winking to the camera as if taking a selfie. Frankly speaking, that image was a far cry from the overall mood of this gathering. Couldn't you have found a different picture? Gurendo grumbled. There are others, Kuro said with a wave of her hand. The next moment, the huge image projected in the center of the world was replaced with another, then another. Clara in a peculiar outfit. Clara cosplaying as a maid. Clara's clothes being melted by a slime, the image a stone's throw away from having to be blurred out for decency's sake. Enough! Gurendo growled in resignation. In the end, the first image had indeed been the most mature. Anything else of note? Yes. Her influencer ability converts fame and attention into magical energy. In other words, the more people who know about her and who are aware of her exploits, the greater her power increases. What a headache. So even if we exercise caution, that will only boost her powers? That's right. However, Kuro paused for a moment, moving her hand once more and replacing the projected photograph with a short video clip. Hiya there. And we read back at Clara channel time. Are you having a crazy day, my Clara mates? Right then. So I am thinking of running a little experiment today. Something called Are Immortals Really Incapable of Dying? The video continued, and the mage Clara Tokushima spoke to the audience amid the turmoil on display in a light-hearted manner, complete with exaggerated reactions and gestures. Watching her, Gurendo raised a quizzical eyebrow. What's this? A video, uploaded to the mage-exclusive video website MagiTube just a few hours ago, Kuro said, her eyes downcast. Right. Even with everything that had happened, despite her attack on the garden and her true identity coming to light, Clara continued to post new videos. Of course, we've asked the company responsible for managing the website to suspend her account, but it seems she keeps finding new ways to bypass our restrictions, either by creating new accounts or using those of her followers. It's a game of cat and mouse, I am afraid, Kuro explained. Gurendo rested a hand on his forehead as though battling a migraine. You retelling me that gambling upstart prankster is a mythic great annihilation factor? How rude, judging others by their appearance, sounded a flat electronic voice. The speaker's identity was soon revealed. Just as it had when Gurendo first spoke, the scenery warped, the space to Mushiki's left pulsating and expanding. Spreading out before him was a pixelated video game screen. In the center of that blinking, low-resolution landscape sat a man with somewhat gloomy eyes, hunched over on both knees. Baito Shikimori, headmaster of the Mage Training Institute Twilight City. Though he looked young, like Gurendo, he was another powerful mage fully qualified to attend this conference. That girl is fused with the Ouroboros and has turned more than 100 mages into immortals to attack the garden. That's all that matters. Unnecessary preconceptions can cloud one's judgment. I don't need you to tell me that. I am not about to let my guard down, no matter the foe. Gurendo grumbled back in mild irritation. If I was to judge you by your appearance, I'd say you re a dubious-looking middle-aged man. And you re as garrulous as ever, I see. I don't know what kind of look you re going for, but round sunglasses are taking it a bit too far, if you ask me. Are you ever going to learn when to drop it? Gurendo exclaimed in exasperation. On closer inspection, he seemed more than a little embarrassed, his cheeks having turned bright red. Then, perhaps in response to this exchange, the space to the far right of Mushiki's vision stirred slightly. The scenery reminded him of the interior of a grand Japanese-style building. The sliding Fusima doors, installed in several layers, opened quickly one after the other, revealing a bamboo blind at the very end of the building. Behind it, the silhouette of a figure leaning forward was faintly visible. Whatever the case, the woman's voice began from behind the screen. She was Ao Fuyejo, headmistress of the Mage Training Institute Holoarch. First of all, we should clarify where the responsibility for this debacle lies. Isn't that right, Rindo? At this, the last person joining them flinched. In appearance, she looked to be around 13 or 14 years old, with a fearless countenance and her hair tied in a bun behind her head. Her eyebrows, clearly defined as though to emphasize her strong willpower, were now twisted in a grim expression. Her presence, here in this space, was highly unusual. The reason for that was simple: she was the only figure here who was not the head of a mage training institute. As if to hammer home that point, she was seated in what was possibly a plain conference room bathed exclusively in white. Only a single chair filled that wide expanse. The girl's name was Rindo Shianji, and she was a student at Shadow Tower. There were two main reasons why she, a student, had been invited to this meeting. The first was that she was the great-great-granddaughter and a direct descendant of the tower's former headmaster Kuozaki Shianji. The second was that so many mages at the tower had been turned into immortals during the previous incident. It is true that Saika let Clara Tokushima slip away. But that was only because she was immortal, right? The garden was attacked without warning by more than 100 enemies, but Saika managed to fend them off. That feat should be worthy of praise, not denounced. So, what of the tower? Ao continued, moving as though she were peering at Rindo's face. Are we to believe that no one noticed anything unusual ahead of time, not even with more than 100 mages, the headmaster included, being turned into immortals? Well, Rindo stammered at this pointed remark. Ao, however, looked to be in no mood to lower her weapons. Tell me, Rindo. When did your dear old grandfather stoop to becoming a filthy immortal? Or do you mean to tell me you don't even know that? TCH. What a mess old Shianji has gotten himself caught up in. Incompetence is one thing, but getting turned into an annihilation factor pawn and threatening the whole human race? He would have been better off choosing death. Until now, Rindo had been staring down at her feet in shame, when she suddenly looked up. As the acting representative of Shadow Tower, I am truly, very sorry. I am terribly ashamed for what has happened. I will accept any criticism, any condemnation. But please, I beg of you, take back that insult to my great-great-grandfather's name. Her voice resonated with quiet anger. Her hands were trembling slightly, and her face was dripping with cold sweat. It was little wonder. Of course she resented those remarks, but they had come from the head of another mage training school. Ao was too powerful an opponent for her to dare express an opinion like this directly. It was only natural that she was tense and filled with fear. Yet Ao merely waved the fan clutched in her hand, chuckling in the face of Rindo's determination. A shadow flickered from behind the bamboo blind. Insult? She responded. What a curious thing to say. Does the tower consider it an insult to state the simple fact of the matter? Then what should I say? That Kuozaki Shianji, your institute's headmaster, was a fool for failing to notice a surprise attack coming from one of his own students? Or perhaps he had some ulterior motive involving Clara Tokushima? Either way, he ought to be dead by now, yet he is still alive and well. Rindo, unable to stand this anymore, pushed her chair back and jumped quickly to her feet. Then she crouched low as two bright, gleaming patterns appeared over her hands and shoulders. Her world crest, a pattern that emerged whenever a modern-day mage used one of their substantiation techniques. Second substantiation, meteoric stria. As Rindo said those words, a rugged long sword appeared by her waist. Her second substantiation, the second of her unique manifestation techniques, transformed mana into matter. Rindo took a battle stance against Ao. Oh. Ao's tone underwent a dangerous transformation. What is the meaning of this? Even here, it is no joke to point a weapon at someone. Or have you, too, been taken in by the Ouroboros? I suppose it is like they say, you can fight your own blood. Don't you dare say another word. Rindo cried in anger as she hit the ground running. She must have been using some kind of magic technique, as she sped toward Ao with the speed of a flying bullet. Her target, however, wasn't the slightest bit flustered. With a wave of her folding fan, a blue will-o'-the-wisp shaped like a giant bird appeared before the bamboo blind. Rindo continued her approach, while Ao waited to intercept it. In just a few brief moments, the two substantiations would collide. But Lady Saika, Koro urged. The next moment, Mushiki waved his hand, sending a skyscraper falling from the sky to separate the two. Eep! Oh! The gigantic structure all but grazed against Rindo's nose as it pierced the ground, shattering the boundaries of the world before eventually melting away into the air. Calm down, both of you, Mushiki said in an effort to placate them, the voice emanating from his throat clearly not that of a man. But that was also as it should be. Because right now, Mushiki wasn't he himself. Long, shimmering hair covered his head and shoulders. His facial features were neat and orderly, perfectly arranged according to the golden ratio. And enshrined in the middle of it were a pair of astonishing colored eyes. Yes. He wasn't the male high school student Mushiki Kuga, but rather Saika Kuozaki, headmistress of the Mage Training Institute Void Garden. Rindo, Mushiki called out. Why yes. She replied in a weak voice. I understand how you feel, but isn't your enemy. I ask you, please don't bear your weapon here. Sorry. Rindo, who had seemed possessed earlier, bowed obediently, and deactivated her world crest and sword. Next, Mushiki looked at Ao. You too. You always go too far. Apologize to Rindo, he instructed. Yes, I said too much. I am sorry. Ao nodded indifferently. Not at all, Rindo replied with a bitter expression. She still looked a little agitated, but she seemed to understand at least that her behavior had posed a serious problem. It was perhaps going too far to say that the matter was settled, but both Rindo and Ao seemed to have calmed down for the time being. Seriously, cut it out. Fellow mages quarreling now? What has to become of us? Gurendo interjected. Oh, it is fine, isn't it? So long as they only go at it here. I am kinda interested. I mean, a young mage challenging Ao Fuyajo? Are you kidding? Shikimori countered. Why you? If left unchecked, these two would no doubt start another argument, so Mushiki let out an audible cough to catch everyone's attention. In that case, let us discuss concrete countermeasures. The Ouroboros Clara Tokushima hybrid must be defeated. I'll need you all to lend me your strength. Close to 60 minutes later, the meeting came to an end. To be honest, there was a lot that Mushiki couldn't fully grasp, but he did his best to maintain a composed expression at all times. As they had both agreed earlier, whenever he had trouble answering a given question, he would give an exaggerated nod and turn the discussion over to Koro. He had been at the garden for only a short period of time, so he couldn't be expected to respond perfectly to every question. His principal responsibility here was to appeal to the heads of the other schools and convince them that Saika was alive and well. That's about everything. Thank you all again, everyone, Mushiki said at last, looking at the others now that the discussions were concluded. That was a de facto declaration of adjournment, and the heads of the other schools responded in tacit understanding. I'll be off, then. Hopefully next time it will be about a more peaceful matter, Gurendo said with a snap of his fingers, and with that, both he and the red space that he was inhabiting disappeared like a rising mist, leaving only a view of a simple conference room. Me too. Send me the details later, MK? Next was Shikimori, his electronic voice blending into static that soon consumed his image. Oh. Rindo watched in awe before noticing Mushiki's gaze and jumping back in fright. I'll excuse myself, too. Thank you for taking the time to join us. Not at all. I am sorry for causing such a scene, Rindo said with an apologetic look. Then, glancing back and forth at the spaces that Gurendo and Shikimori had been occupying until just a moment earlier, she asked, sorry. Is it okay if I leave normally? Of course. Mushiki nodded in response to this awkward question. Perhaps she thought she had to make some dramatic exit, too? Her consternation was cute to watch, and Mushiki could feel his face relaxing into a smile, but he fought to hold it back. If he laughed here, no doubt he would leave her feeling even more self-conscious. Goodbye then, Rindo said with a humbled bow before awkwardly turning to leave. But then, as if suddenly struck by a question, she stopped, glancing back at him. Is my grandfather Gusei Shionji, is he still alive? Yes. In his current state, he won't die even if you kill him. It was Kuro who answered. The remark could have been taken as a joke or sarcasm, but there was no hint of levity in her voice. It was, ultimately, just a simple statement of fact. At this, Rindo gave an uneasy frown. I know this is a lot to ask, but might I be permitted to see if you just want to see him? I wouldn't recommend it. Especially if you want to maintain your respect for the man he once was. Rindo clenched her teeth and turned to face Mushiki. I'll do my best, for what little it's worth. I'll stop the Yorubaros. I'll stop Clara Tokushima, she said as if to affirm her resolve. Then, with one last glare at Ao, she offered Mushiki a deep bow and made her exit, disappearing into thin air. And so there was only one figure left, Ao Fuyajo, who was watching from behind her bamboo blind. Ah, youth, she said with a wave of her fan. Vivacious anger when faced with the absurdities of the world. Now that's a feeling I haven't felt in a long time. No. Maybe I should say I've grown accustomed to them. I envy her a little. Envy? You don't sound jealous, Mushiki admonished her with a dour look. Ao shrugged. I have no ill feelings toward her. Is that so? Mushiki asked, her eyes narrowed. It was a special talent, in a sense, being able to say all that to someone to whom you held no ill will toward. Yes, of course, Ao answered with a quick nod. It's just, old Shionji is another matter entirely. For him, I've nothing but contempt and disgust. For someone responsible for one of our academies to throw himself on the mercy of an annihilation factor and attack humans. Death would be too good for him. But there's the problem, we can even kill him. Don't hold it against him too much. Mythologia aren't like regular annihilation factors. They exist in a realm that transcends common sense. You know that firsthand, yes? Ao pursed her lips at Mushiki's last remark. He was referring to something that Kuro had briefed him on prior to the meeting. As a mage, Ao had once been involved in the subjugation of another mythic great annihilation factor alongside Saika, the Leviathan. That's precisely why I feel the way I do. We must never lose to those annihilation factors. No matter what they do. No matter what it takes. There is no meaning in a fight well fought, no value in praise. No medal for us mages, either. What we need to do is achieve concrete results. Isn't that right, Saika? Ao. Sensing a deep undercurrent of hatred in her voice, Mushiki arched an eyebrow. In the next moment, as though sensing something was off, Ao tilted her head. You are Saika, aren't you? Mushiki's heart skipped a beat. She couldn't possibly have seen through to his true identity, could she? With an astonishing degree of concentration and his paranoid powers of observation, Mushiki had been doing his utmost to reproduce Saika's mannerisms and voice. That said, there was no such thing as perfection in this world, except for Saika's good looks, that is. Perhaps he had slipped up without even realizing it. Obscured behind her bamboo blind, Ao's face was unreadable. Mushiki glanced at Kuro, imploring her to help. Kuro, however, said nothing, and merely watched their exchange without betraying a single thought of her own. For a moment, he thought she had given up, but no. She was simply demonstrating with her body how the attendant Kuro Karasuma would respond in this situation. And so Mushiki pursed his lips. It seems that I've lost my sense of humor since we last saw each other. Or have I become so beautiful that you hardly recognize me? After a long moment, Ao let out a small sigh. Apologies. I said something strange. No, don't let it worry you. Mushiki spoke measuredly, doing his best not to betray the turmoil in his chest. I am glad we had a chance to talk again, Ao continued as she tried to collect herself. If not for this meeting, I would have given you a better welcome. Ah, yes. How about I invite you to tea next time? The best tea available, with cupcakes. Oh, I look forward to it. Let us make it a celebration after defeating the Ouroboros. Then, changing the topic, Ao asked, is Ruri well? That girl hardly ever writes to me. Mushiki felt his eyebrows almost twitch at the sound of that name. That was only natural. Ruri Fuyojo, the student in question, was his younger sister. Then again, it was perfectly natural that she would come up in any conversation with Ao. After all, they both shared the same surname. Much to Mushiki's surprise, the Fuyojos, his own maternal relatives, seemed to be a well-regarded and prestigious family in the magic world. In other words, Ao was a blood relative of both Ruri and himself, though he wasn't sure of the precise nature of their relationship. Oh, don't worry. She seems to be enjoying herself with every passing day. Her abilities are amazing, too. She is already an S-ranked mage. And I enjoy having her around. I see, Ao mumbled meaningfully. Then it is fine. Seeing how she half-forced herself into the garden, it wouldn't do if she didn't achieve results, she said, her face filled with deep emotion as she looked up at Mushiki. Yes, I truly am glad you made it in time. It is nothing. Ao hid her face behind her fan as though to brush aside Mushiki's remark. Then again, that was hardly necessary as her face was already hidden behind a bamboo blind. Well then, it is time I go, too. Ah. See you again soon. Yes. We can allow a mythic great annihilation factor to roam the streets. We bring it down. I'll do everything in my power. With those final words, the space around Ao disappeared, as though consumed by blue flames. Finally, only Mushiki and Kuro remained. Phew. A few seconds after realizing they were now alone, Mushiki let out a tired sigh. The tension built up inside him unraveling. At the same time, the horizontal skyscraper on which he was sitting vanished, the space around him returning to its original form. The two were in a bleak conference room awfully empty in appearance, no doubt on account of the sparse furniture and decoration. Well done, Kuro said appreciatively from behind him. Mushiki turned around and gave a forced smile. I hope it went all right. She seemed a little suspicious there at the end. Headmistress Fuyojo is always like that. Even while Lady Saika was still in her prime, she would often say suggestive insinuations and throw barbs for no apparent reason. I see. Once more, Mushiki let out an awkward sigh. But still that's really bad for the heart. As he spoke, he recalled the scene that until a moment ago had stretched out before him, and he glanced down to scrutinize his right hand. A space divided into 5 colors. The dispute between Rindo and Ao. And Saika's towering skyscraper that had brought an end to it. From Mushiki's standpoint, that scene of carnage could very well have ended with someone dying. Even now, his heart was still racing. Kuro, however, was calm. Don't worry. As I explained earlier, no one was actually there. We asked them to stop because, yes, those two fighting would have certainly caused a problem, but even if it had come to bloodshed, they wouldn't have died. Right. Everything that Mushiki had just seen had been simply a projection wrought by magic. In other words, it was a magic-based remote conference. The room seemed to be designed through the application of a technique that changed the surrounding scenery in accordance with the individual accessing it. But part of our consciousness is still connected, right? Is that what you mean? Strong stimuli that would end up having a physical response? It wouldn't kill them, Kuro answered flatly. Right, Mushiki responded, still uneasy. Then again. This probably wasn't a big deal as far as she was concerned. Now then, she continued, changing the subject. While our options are limited, our plan of action has been decided. For now, we must all do what we can. What we can. Yes. That means magic training in the meantime. For you to master Lady Saika's techniques, and to also handle your own techniques, it is imperative that you increase your magic level. Even if Clara Tokushima is found, that knowledge won't do us much good if you cannot fight her properly. Kuro paused for a moment, glancing at her watch. Fortunately, the meeting ended ahead of schedule, so we have time to spare. If we leave now, we may be able to make it to your first class. Let us hurry along and get ready.
Only the first half hour is uploaded to YouTube. The transcription was generated with Whisper and censored using Google AI to comply with the platform. This project is completely free at free.jupiteraudiobooks.com, where we upload complete projects and you can make free requests. If you prefer an ad-free experience, want to listen to exclusive novels, or need your requests processed much faster, visit our premium version at jupiteraudiobooks.com. Also, we have a PDF library at euronovels.bokuboi.com. We hope you enjoy it.